Welcome back, darlings. My name is 42, and today is day 3 of our Halloween week. 242 has been working so hard to get these videos done, so I hope you don't miss a single one. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. Don't fucking move, I have a knife. I'm going to slowly hand it to you so that you can get ready to fight that thing standing behind you. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volumes of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Oi, this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the loss of Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the sunken sad uncertainty of rusting of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terror never felt before, so that now, to still my beating heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, that it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hasting there no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came a-rapping, and so faintly you came a-tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was a whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into my chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what threat is, and this mystery explored. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explored. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explored. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly day of yore. Not the least of obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with the mane of the lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this Albany bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, are sure not craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on this night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear a discourse so plainly, though it answered little meaning, little relevance bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing a bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast upon a sculpture bust above his chamber door, with such a name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word did he outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, old friend has flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master who unmercilessly disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his song one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird, and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy onto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungaining, ghastly gaunt of ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat eager'd in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fury eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushioned velvet lining that lamp lit goading o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamp light goading o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by a seraphim, whose footfalls trickled on turfed floors. Wrench, I cried, thy God hath let thee, by these angels he hath sent thee. Respite, respite inneth thee from the memory of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind of Nethly, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempered scent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, dislot yet undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there a balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by the heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden if, within the distant Adedan, it shall clasp a sainted maiden whose the angels named Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden who the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as token of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And that raven, never flittering, still is sitting on the palisade bust, a palace just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seemings of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him steaming, throwing his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out the shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. I was so happy when I finally lost all those extra pounds and reached my goal weight. Though it's kind of worrying that no matter what I eat now, I keep losing weight. The Witch of the Old Willow by Corpse Child. It was almost noon when Jacqueline Crow was led to the old oak tree where hung the gallows, forever condemned as a witch, the witch of the old willow. A tear betrayed her young face at her folly, hearing still the vicious accusations they cast upon her in a malicious volley. 12 times the bells clanged, upon the last she was hanged. She began to cry, the noose not allowing her to die. She feared she would hear their vile persecutions forevermore. The devil's devoted whore! By no ear was Jacqueline's cries met with mercy, having marked her every uttered word as perceived heresy. Tighter the lethal hemp dug into her pale skin, death yet not relieving her of her wrongful, accused sin. In the corner of her oceanic eye, the dark shadow in the crowd she did spy. She could hear his voice, the blasphemous sound. Her dread was now unbound. She could hear him now, goading her in her desperate sorrow. Say it, my sweet dear, pledged to, by my dark hand, follow. With kerosene and fire, her prosecutors sated their murderous intent. Her cries and pleas for mercy were all but spent. 2 sparks, and the pyre neath her bare feet was alight. Dread pervaded her at all the recollection of that sad, grave night. Through the woods she and her lover would tread. In those woods his pledge of undying love for her was said. In the eyes of her lover she was hopelessly entranced. Around a fire they all night danced. Out of sight behind the tall pine, there stalked the shadow, fouler than the filthiest swine. It watched the lovers in their play. With vulpine exultation, he plotted to, with her, have his way. In her slumber he beckoned, urging her to allow him onto him. Her innocence he reckoned. His cunning tongue fueled his charade, appearing to her as a sweet serenade. Entranced, she blindly followed the siren call. That night lay beneath the spirit, her innocence would fall. Come the risen dawn, she and her beloved were surrounded by townsfolk claiming her to be infernal spawn. For a woodsman claimed the witness of a horrified scene in the night, the act of appalling, unclean rite. By hand and foot she was bound. Despite her wails, no mercy was found. Not even her love spoke to her aid, claiming with the demon he saw her laid. The court's judgment was swift. The execution of her life declared a boon, a gift. 3 sunsets passed in utter anguish to cold, filthy, dark, unforgiving cell she would languish. She looked up to the waxy moon during her last nightfall. Mercy, Lord, hear my call. In her heart, she knew she had by God been forsaken. She felt her hope, her joy, and her will to live slowly be taken. Then, from the dark, abyssal shadows, he came, bearing the promise that her fate, her soul, would not suffer the same. Take my hand, my dear child, for through me may your vengeance upon those who have wronged you run wild. With desperate fear spreading in her breast, she gave heed to his ominous request. She desired only from her presence scouring to be spread. The fates of her soul and her following kin she no longer cared. Pledge your devotion, child, and by the rising sun of the next morrow, they will all forevermore waken, only as one cries to the heavens in sorrow. Higher and higher, she watched the flames climb. Feeling their unmerciful scorch, she looked to his eyes once more and knew it was time. Wanderer from beyond, Lord of Shadow, I beseech you, deliver me from peril and deliver them into woe. My body, my heart, and my soul I will pledge to your every whim. Upon the conclusion of her damning and sacrilegious hymn, she screamed to the sky in agony. The crowd merely looked on in apathy, confident that they had ridden the land of wickedness. Thus the skies blackened, and over them all spread a mysterious drag of sickness. Once the ragging elements greedily consumed the drying oak pyre, reducing her to ash and searing her mind, heart, and soul by hellfire. They dispersed, a creepy dread eclipsing their former victory. Why and how was still a mystery. Through the darkness and beyond she tread, a vile place where even the innocent were bled. Pervading the void around her, she heard their anguishing cries. Their tears and their screams told no lies. They told her, through mind, body, and heart, how far her soul had fell. For she knew she would now forever tread in hell. The burned signia of treachery upon her forehead would mark her heavenly isolation. The last tear she could ever shed was that of utter desolation. Through the seamlessly endless eons, her consciousness grew numb. Slowly, to the will of the wrath, she would succumb. From within her never-ending cycle of woe, she remembered her promise to the demon, wraithed in shadow. Her body, her heart, and her soul she would pledge to his every whim. Suddenly, there he stood, her dark seraphim. By my will, I have delivered you from God's hand. By my power, you shall spread terror upon your once native land. With her soul empty and her heart bent, she vowed that only when the blood of her prosecutors and their descendants soaked the earth would her fury be spent. It was a grave dust that upon the old willow she came, her first target, a young and gorgeous dame. The first thing the dame would experience would be crippling fright. In her victim's suffering, Jacqueline took malign delight. The maiden's death did not end the depravity. She fervently revealed in her sheer inhumanity. It mattered not to her how, who, nor when, for she would murder all in the many coming nights. Men, women, and children. Her wrath knew no limit, felt no bonds. Her enraged shrieks were, for many, her coming sound. Beautiful women she would strangulate, young men in the night she would violate, and children, the sweet and innocent lads and lasses, in large shallow pits they would be found in masses. In terror the folks beseeched the aid of the priest. "Save us," they cried. "Deliver us from the clutches of this vile beast." When the sun lowered and once more was replaced by the waxing moon, the priest and his clerics enacted a plan, knowing the vengeful ghost would be coming soon. Wielding their image of Christ's sacrifice and Jacqueline Crow's ash remains, they resolved to bind her unclean soul to the tree at which she was burned, creating her purgatory within the mortal planes. For 3 hours, they recited their prayers at the base of Jacqueline's fury spectre. "Our Father, who art in heaven, we come to you in this hour of terror. We ask only for your divine aid to bind this grave oak and deliver us, your children, from this scourge." Finally, they felt the phantom from the ground beneath emerge. At the sight of them, she attempted to tempt the young apprentice, promising their pleasures with her to be endless. The priest, not vexed by her facade, commanded in the name of God, "Jacqueline Crow, concubine of Lucifer, I forever condemn you to this oak, your former sepulchre." At this, the enraged witch attempted a vicious attack. At the sight of the priest's cross, she was driven back. Finally, she had been driven back to the oak, as her body was consumed. In the shadow's name she would evoke. "With your pious ways, you have bought you and your bleating sheep only slight relief. Even bound, my power will always bring upon you all misery and grief. Remember this, for this tree will always bear this curse. Any of whom have taken of its delectable fruit, their bodies will be forfeit for me to traverse. Through them, my power and spirit will thrive anew." With her final declaration, she was finally subdued. The clerics disperse, returning to their homes, confident that the evil they face no longer freely roams. Despite their victory, they wouldn't neglect the phantom's dying claim, fearful that she may not again so easily be tamed. From each day hence, it was declared that the accused tree was forbidden, punishable as a high offense. For many moons following, the townsfolk were able to live in bliss. Most of them, seeing the blooming fruit, found it in them to resist. Such, however, would not last, for upon an unsuspected victim, it was supposed that a mysterious temptation was cast. The boon to eat of the cursed fruit was relentlessly insistent. Wary traveler, I sense you are hungry and in need of nourishment. Panic flooded the hearts of the townsfolk when one of the fruits was discovered with a bite. The mountain terror caused some to almost die of fright. Who had unleashed this monster allowed it to once again wander? None were able to prove the culprit, he who would forever live as the Lich's puppet. To this very day, there are still none that could say. All that is known is merely this, that somewhere inside someone her evil is amiss. When or how her wrath will return, none may ever know. The hour it does will be the hour of anguish and perpetual sorrow, for they will all fall to the rage of Jacqueline Crow, the witch of the old willow. As he stared back at me, I didn't know what was more horrifying. The fact that his head had been viciously torn off of his body, or the fact that he was starting to stand up. If you liked those poems, hit that like button and make sure it feels it, darling. If you're new, well, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this channel or podcast, share it with anyone who might like it. If you'd like to help another way, 242 has made a Patreon, merch, and PayPal. Also, 242 has made many social media accounts, and if you like to find them and everything else, check out that tree link. I'll see you tomorrow. Sleep tight and don't let me bite.